All right, you guys, I want you to picture something for me. Imagine when way back when, I've been married almost 11 years now. So I want you to imagine me when I'm dating my wife, and imagine we meet here, and the plan is we're going to go to Disneyland, right? Now, it's like a big date. We have all these big expectations. We're going to go there. I want to see Star Wars Land and all that, which that wasn't around when we were actually dating. But so we arrive here. I break the news to her. She's pumped. She's excited. Let's go. And we decide the quicker we get to Disneyland, the better. And so we hop in the car, and we decide to be a little bit cavalier with the laws. So we burn rubber getting out of this parking lot. We go over a few curbs in order to get on the freeway. We're just hauling butt. And so we finally get to the whoop-de-whoops in the 52. You guys know that area, right? And so we get there, and by that time, my car has a few scratches on it, but everything's good. It's still driving, and we are determined. We're going to make it. So we round and get on the I-5 north because we missed the 805 because we were distracted because we're so in love. And so we get on the I-5, and we start going up towards Disneyland, but then what catches our eye is the giant white Mormon castle. And we're like, that's basically Disneyland, right? And so we just pull off and we just park there and we're like, this is it. We just settle for the Mormon castle. That doesn't make any sense at all, right? Like, what a letdown that would be. You show up and that thing's pretty, but it's not Disneyland. There's no Star Wars Land at the Mormon castle in La Jolla. And I bring that up because a lot of what we do in dating and relationships is that we get together and we decide, hey, we are going to get to marriage, and we're stoked. We want to arrive there, and the quicker we get there, the better. And we have all this promise and expectation and hope. So we start in that direction, but we're a little bit cavalier with our boundaries, if we have any at all. And so we're going, and along the way, our relationship has some bumps and some scratches, but we keep going. And then often what we do is we find something that is kind of like what we were hoping for, at least in appearance, and we settle for that. But what we find out, at least in the long term, is it's nothing like what we were hoping for. It is way different. Yes, I don't want that to define our relationships. I don't want that to define your relationship. I don't want that to define your marriage. And so I'm the young adults pastor here, and over the last 5 to 7 years, we've had a lot of young married couples go through a lot of challenges, struggles, and many of them did not make it. And one of the reasons we put together this DTR class is because we want to have healthy, strong relationships with God, healthy, strong friendships, healthy, strong dating relationships, and we want to arrive at healthy, strong marriages, because that is what's going to ultimately bless us, bless our families, bless this community, bless our city. We want nothing short of that. So tonight I'm stoked. We're going to wrap up this DTR message. John started off week 1 describing definitions of different relationships and what the goals are. Last week, Bryce talked about the friend zone, how to get out of the friend zone. And so today, I'm picking it up, and where we are in this progression is, let's say you and another person, you've come together and you've decided, all right, we like each other. We've done all the proper steps leading up to this. We went on the 2 to 4 appropriate dates to figure out should we date or not. And we decided with wisdom and counsel from parents and mentors, we're going to date. So it's official. Your boyfriend, girlfriend, you put a name on it. Now what? That's what we're talking about today. Official, you're dating, boundaries, and beyond. Now I want to point out right as we get started, there's 2 things we have to know. The goal in dating is this, clarity. And the goal in marriage is intimacy. Now let me explain that. The goal in dating, the whole purpose of dating is for you and this other person to come together and decide and be very, very clear that you are the right people to enter into the covenant, the lifelong covenant of marriage with. So I want, before when I was dating my wife, the goal was to be very clear so that when I stood at that altar on my wedding day, that this is a woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I am in a position as a man to lead her and provide in this relationship the way God's called me to. You want to be clear. Now, what is intimacy? Intimacy is what brings two people together and unites them so that they can, in a more strengthened manner, carry out the covenant that they have entered into. Now, we get this mixed up, and when we bring in intimacy into a dating relationship, it actually makes the dating unclear. As you bring intimacy into a dating relationship, you make it harder for you to understand and see the things that you need to see and understand in order to enter into marriage with strength and confidence. Are you guys with me? So, the whole point, you've decided, we like each other, we're smitten, right? We're boyfriend, we're girlfriend. Now, the point is clarity so that you can enter marriage with strength. Now, before we get into the real practical boundaries, I need to say one more thing. Sometimes people say, like, why do we need boundaries? Like, we're just going to be good. We're not going to do anything dumb. And I want to tell you this. Attraction blinds us. Now, I'm not just saying that blindly or making that up. There's this thing. When you fall in love, and is that actually, that shouldn't be, I don't think, is that in your notes right there? Oh, that's interesting. All right, look. This is cool. When you fall in love or get infatuated with someone, infatuated is like your cheeks turn red, you got butterflies, you like really like them. This is what happens when I'm like infatuated with my wife. They're like, hey, so I hear you've been talking to Courtney. And I'm like, you know, what are you bringing? You know, that's infatuation. All right. When that starts, there's neuropeptides that are released in your brain. Now, I want you to think of these as an hourglass. These neuropeptides are released slowly over the course of a year or year and a half. And what they do, yeah, I know that's a lot of writing up there. I didn't realize, but they fade. Now, these neuropeptides, they help you, as you're infatuated, they help you feel really connected to someone. Here's a few of the things they do. They increase your energy, your euphoria. They cause you sometimes to deal with sleeplessness or even impulsivity. Now, if you're dating someone and you're infatuated, these neuropeptides are being released in your brain, and the whole time you're looking for clarity, it could be challenging to get that clarity. Here's some other things that happens. You can, through these, become emotionally dependent or more dependent on someone because your brain's telling you, hey, when that person comes by, there's something that you really, really like about that person, and you should pursue that further. So you can be dependent. And then get this. Neuropeptides can increase, they can heighten passion when you face adversity. So this is what happens. You see someone and you're like, I think I want to date this person. You start dating, and then someone comes up to you and says, hey, I don't think you should date them. What is that? That's adversity. And so if you have these neuropeptides being released in your brain and there's no checks, there's no balances into this, and someone comes up to you and speaks wisdom and it's good, and they say, hey, I don't know that that's the right person for you, these neuropeptides are actually going to work against that. And they're going to make you want to say, you don't know anything about my relationship. You don't know anything about me. You don't know them. If you did, you would think it's okay. And all of a sudden start pushing against all of those things. So why do I bring this up? Well, these neuropeptides are great if we lived a long time ago when people had arranged marriages. And that first year to year and a half, you needed all the help you can get to build that relationship. Yeah. But we don't live in that age. We're not going back there. Not anytime soon. All right. Now, it could be bad if you need clarity. So we need boundaries for two reasons. We need boundaries because when we like someone, we like casting off boundaries. And we weren't created to date someone for 4 or 5 years. And just the culture that we're in, the society we're in, that's often the case. But we need boundaries because the clarity we want in dating can get mixed up and challenged by so many other things. That is why I want to encourage you, if you missed Bryce's message last week, go listen to that, because you want to do as much prep work as possible entering into a relationship. And then if you do all that prep work, you get prepared, you enter into a relationship, and right as soon as you're official, right as soon as you put your name on it, you're boyfriend and girlfriend, then the next date, you have a boundary-making date. You get together, you call them, you say, hey, girlfriend, we're going to meet at this coffee shop, and we're writing boundaries because we're serious. And then you get together, and you're going to do what I'm going to work you through now over the next 15, 20 minutes, okay? So we want to set up boundaries. Now, here's what you're going to do. You're going to meet with that boyfriend or girlfriend. You're going to bring a piece of paper or 2 or 3 or 4. You're going to write at the top boundaries. And then right under the boundaries, you are going to write out the why. Write out the why. Now, this cannot be too long. It can't be too long. You can have 6 pages of why, and you're doing good. All right? Don't worry about it. Now, here's why we write out the why. There's this quote I love. It's by this guy named John O'Leary. He says, if you know your why, you can endure anyhow. If you know your why, you can endure anyhow. Now, there are a lot of things we endure that we don't want to because we have a really important why. How do I get through my homework even though I hate it? Well, our why is because we want to graduate. We like not being on restriction from our parents. We like not being on probation at school or whatever. The why is really clear. It's worth it to do the homework even though it's annoying, right? Why do you work? All the old people in this room, we work because we have bills to pay. And it is a whole lot better to work and deal with that struggle than the struggle of not being able to pay our bills. If you know your why, you can endure anyhow. So, in every relationship where a guy and a girl come together and they like each other, naturally, if you guys like each other, then you want to get closer and closer, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And there's a healthy progression to that we need to watch out for. That's the how. How do we watch out for that? How are we careful? We do that by writing out this why. Why do we want boundaries? Here, let me give you some examples. You could write out boundaries because you want God to be glorified in your relationship. You can write out, we want boundaries. Our why is because we want this relationship to lead to a healthy marriage. We want to honor parents, mentors, the church. If you guys are doing ministry right now in any capacity, one of your reasons why you should have a good relationship that honors God is because your ministry, there's kids in your ministry that look up to you. So you should want to do things right for their sake. I want to encourage you to write down verses. Why should we have boundaries? To be careful not to stumble sexually. 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, flee sexual immorality. Why do we want boundaries? To flee youthful lusts, as it says in 2 Timothy 2:22. Or when I was in high school, I was in a relationship for 14 months. And one of our whys right there at the top was 1 Timothy 4:12. Let no one look down on you for your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity. Show yourself an example of those who believe. You want to write out your why. So if you're in a relationship right now and you don't have boundaries, your next time getting together with your boyfriend or girlfriend should be to write out your boundaries. And you're going to start out by writing out why you want to honor these. Again, it can't be too long because that is going to strengthen, that's going to empower you when you want to break those boundaries or you want to slide a little bit or be a little bit cavalier. So now what are the actual boundaries? Let's get into it. Let's get real practical. All right, physically. Now today we're going to go over physical, emotional, and spiritual boundaries. And here's the key. We want to have a healthy control, a good control of the physical progression. For emotional, you're going to say, I want a healthy or a good control of the emotional progression. And what I mean by that is this. Y'all are in high school. So here's what it's going to look like. Say you start dating the love of your life in your junior year. And girls, this is like, he's not Jesus, but he is as close as it gets. And guys, he's not... Hey, that was bound to happen at some point tonight, so I'm glad we got out of the way. Guys, she's not this perfect, like, angel, but man, she is close. All right. Now, here's what you need to understand. Everyone, stay with me. Shh. If you're a junior, that means you're going to date junior year, senior year. You're not going to get married freshman year of college. It's possible, but if you do that, I'm going to tell you, there's other challenges that are going to be pretty difficult to work through. Getting married sophomore year of college is pretty dang challenging, right? And we're going to work through, hopefully we'll get to some of those challenges. Realistically, you're going to be dating this person for 4, 5, 6 years. Now, again, this is all hypothetical, but if that was the case, you want a healthy progression of how these things continue, how they work in your relationship. Because if you're a junior and you start stumbling physically, you have quite a few years to go. You're either in for a lot of challenge and struggle, you're in where you're going to need to break up. Like, let's just get ahead of all of that. Write your boundaries, write out a ton of reasons why you want to keep them, and then physically, here's what we're going to look at. First thing, you're going to write some boundaries on where you go. Where you go. Now, you guys, I want to encourage you, keep it public. Go to public places. There's no reason for you to be alone with this person. Not at some, like, I don't know, park. Not at some, like, in parking lot. Not at each other's house. That's just not, I tell college students, do not go over to each other's houses when no one else is home alone. And in fact, don't go over to each other's houses if their parents are home, but you then go to their bedroom. Like, keep doors open, and I would say only go into rooms like the living room where people pass often. Now, this can seem, even boundaries, all of this can feel kind of archaic, but let me tell you this. For radical solutions, right, and that's what we want. We don't want marriage the way our world has defined or carried out marriage. I don't want the marriage that the world plays out on TV or in culture or anything like that. But in order to get some radical solutions, it's going to take radical obedience. It's going to take some radical changes to the way we approach things. So watch where you go. Keep it public. Next up there, I want to encourage you guys to, I'm looking at notes. There's a lot up there. One thing I want to encourage you to do is when you go places, if you're driving together, when the car stops, you get out. Car stops, out of the car. I know quite a few people who have lost their virginity in cars. That center console is not the hindrance people think it is. You guys, car stops, you get out. So you're watching where you go. You're watching what you can do. So if you're dating someone, your junior, senior year of high school, you've brought counsel into it, you've made it official, I don't feel like you can hold hands, all right? I think you could hug if you call it what it is, a hug, and then you let go. You're not penguins, right? We're not just huddling together for a while. Hug and let go. But here's the catch. These next few things we got to be careful about. Again, understanding the progression and the timeline in your relationship. I want you to know this. The longer you wait to kiss, the less of a challenge you're going to have to pause and not make out, right? Because once you start kissing, what's next is making out. And once you start making out, when you make out, mentally, what's happening is you are telling your entire body to get ready to prepare to have sex. Now, ask every single adult here, as you randomly ask any adult, they will all agree with that if they're telling the truth. Making out, your hands get bored, you don't know what to do. All of these things start happening. So here's what we want to do. We want to have healthy control of this progression. So, if you're a junior, a senior, and you're not getting married for a while, I want to encourage you to put off kissing as long as possible. And I want to tell you also this, and I tell my college students this. I tell my college students, I really want to encourage you not to make out at all. Now, if you want to start making out, just understand this. I have friends who have not made out until they got married, and they have great marriages. Right? If you are physically, some people think, but what, then I'll get into marriage and we won't be attracted to each other. If you're not attracted to each other, you figure that out a lot sooner. Right? If it is really, really easy not to kiss each other, and you're like, I don't actually even want to kiss them, all right, you have other problems, all right? That's not typical. Most people, this is a struggle, and if it is a struggle, then let's be aware of it and not put ourselves in a position where we're going to have to really, painfully work through this for a long time. So, if you kiss, put it off as long as you can, but keep it simple. Try not to make out. I would encourage you not to make out. Don't make out. If you do, you are going against my counsel. The goal is clarity, not intimacy. Here's a few other quick tips. You guys have notes there? Stay vertical. And this is what I mean by this. If you're watching a movie, don't lay down to watch a movie. Here's another quick tip. 2 blankets. Always. Siempre. Cada vez. 2 blankets. All right? Here's another one. If you can't see it, you can't touch it. Here's what I mean by that. Shh. These are just quick tips. But if it's covered up with clothes, it's no-go for your hands. These things, here's where I've gotten all of these. Every single one of these tips, I've seen people mess up. And then they come to me in my office to get counseling. Usually it leads to me telling them to break up because they need counseling because they don't have boundaries. They've gone way too far. Now they're hurting and struggling. And so we want to watch where we go. We want to watch what we can do. Here's the next one. You want to watch when you talk. When you talk. Here's what I mean by this. That was a really loud slurp. I'm sorry, guys. Hey, I want to encourage you guys at 10 p.m., your phone, boyfriend, girlfriend, you guys stop texting at 10. And you don't pick up texting again until 8. Now here's why. After 10, not only is your self-control low because it's late, but what happened, after 10, you don't need to talk. Let's just get that out of the way. There's nothing, unless if your house is on fire, you have permission to text your boyfriend or girlfriend, hey, my house is on fire, all right? Other than that, you don't need to text after 10. But then when you do text, your self-control is down, and this is what you start to do. You start breaking emotional boundaries because it's so late at night. And you make promises and vows and all these other things. So from 10 to 8, no texting. Are you taking notes? All right, you should be. Take notes. All right. Now here's what the next thing. We want to pay attention physically how much time we spend together. It's important if you're dating in high school, you're not each other's gods. You're not married. You don't need to see each other every night. You don't need to talk every night. When I was dating in high school, and I want to tell you this, my relationship, again, 14 months, we did the physical boundaries really well. We didn't do as well on the emotional boundaries. We'll get to that. But we had this rule according to our mentors that we signed and agreed, and our dates were only a couple hours, and we had to get signed off by our mentors when we wanted to do more. And there's aspects of that where I'm like, man, I'm old enough. I'm so grateful that I didn't rebel against those. Because we broke up. We didn't make it. But the breakup that we had was, it was difficult. It's not fun. We'll get to breakups. But it could have been so much more difficult. The struggle could have been so much greater if we did not follow some of these rules. So have time off. Allow for each other to do ministries. Don't text each other every hour of every day or snap or whatever it is. Don't do that. Give each other some room. So I want you to remember, we want to be on guard against physical stuff, But the next area is emotional. Now, we don't spend as much time on this in the church because physical boundaries, when you break it, it's tangible. You see it. It's easy to recognize. But emotional, what happens is relationships can go very long. They could physically be healthy. But then there's so many promises that are made that the breakups are still as difficult. So emotionally, we want to be on guard about what we talk about. Now, here's what this looks like. You need to get to know each other. So you say, like, you're talking to each other, and if I say to someone, I just started dating, like, hey, what was it like growing up? And they're like, hey, I had a rough childhood. Okay. Now, I'm going to get into it. I'm not going to, like, break into all the inner wounds and struggles that they're going through. We're going to have a healthy progression. Next time, they might give me a little bit more information. Next time, they might give me more information. And after I've been in the relationship a while, then I might be able to really understand some of the struggles that they went through. But when you're starting the date and you're getting clarity, you don't want to bare your soul to your boyfriend or girlfriend, especially not right away, not quickly. The other thing that you want to watch out for is you don't want to make promises. Here's how this looks. You say, someone asks about something in marriage, and you say, well, in marriage, this is what I would do. Now, that's way different than saying, when we're married, I will do this for you. Do you feel the difference in that? And especially girls, you need to be on guard when guys are making promises or vows, because girls, you love those. I mean, more so than guys. And so you want them to say that. But what we do is someone will say that to us and we will own it. And we'll own it early in a relationship. And then when there's struggles that happen, maybe even struggles that are heavy, that require us to break up or get some serious help, we won't want to see them because we're holding on to the promises that were made. That's intimacy clouding clarity. All right, spiritually, we want to guard ourselves here. Now, here's what this looks like. And this is the number one area I get pushback from this material. Because I want to encourage you guys to set up a boundary where you can't go on a date unless you've done devotions that day. But I also want to encourage you not to do devotions together right away. In fact, I would encourage you guys to be weary of praying together, or at least if you're praying together, keep it really topical, keep it light. And just like physically and emotionally, we want to control that progression. You want to eventually, you can pray together and spend some time really praying through heavy stuff. But when you do that early on in a relationship, you can once again start to depend on someone for that, but you're spiritually creating ties that we want to be on guard for. The goal is clarity, not intimacy. So now that's a progression. I want you guys, by the time you're engaged, to be praying together quite a bit, right? But if you're a junior in high school, you could take your time. You got time. Let's slow it down. All right, you guys with me? Now, here's what you do. You have boundaries, big, bold letters, girls, cursive. Then below that, you have the why, and the why cannot be too long, as much as you want. Then you have physical, emotional, spiritual. Now, at the bottom of your boundaries, you put, if we break these boundaries, we will, and then you're going to put consequences in your boundaries. And you're like, dude, I thought this, ease up. No, here's what you need to know. There's already consequences for your boundaries that you break. They're there. They're already there. It's just a matter of us making sure we recognize and see them. I have a whole lot of friends who entered into marriage, and the struggles that they were having while they were dating followed them into marriage. Those are consequences. But if they would have faced some of those sooner and dealt with them, then they wouldn't have carried as many into marriage. So you want to be willing to add consequences for broken boundaries. Let me give you some examples. You break a boundary and you say, okay, this next week, we're not hanging out alone. No dates. Know, like, if we're at high school group together where he's playing volleyball and she's hanging out with some girlfriends and drinking coffee or doing whatever, like, we're going to spend some time separate. Or you do, here's the boundary, we're not texting each other for 5 days. Or, hey, maybe this is it. Maybe you said, all right, we can hug, but we're not going to kiss. And then you find yourself, you broke a boundary, you kissed her. And so what you're doing is now you're going to take a step back and you're going to say, all right, for the next couple weeks, we're not even going to hug. Now, that's pretty gnarly, right? But again, you're making the consequences that are already there, you're making them tangible and visible for you so that you know the next time you're not messing around. Because your goal isn't, especially if you're dating in high school, your goal isn't to get to graduation. Your goal is to get to marriage, and to get to marriage with you two getting there in the proper way and in order to enter into marriage in a way that will lead to blessing. All right, a couple more things. I think every time you break a consequence, right there, you should say, girl, I'm going to reach out to my mentor, blank. Guy, I'm going to reach out to my mentor, and you put their name there. Now, if you don't have a mentor, then I'm going to be hesitant to say you should be dating in high school. Now, if you have like a really, you need someone older and wiser that speaks wisdom into your life. If you don't have that, and not just, now some of you are like, well, I have John Ulloa, and Pastor John's my pastor. And that might be good if Pastor John like knows your situation, knows your relationship, and you respect that voice. But there are a whole lot of you, and it's just not possible for John to have that relationship with all of you. You need to have someone that you're close with, a mentor. All right. Let me say this in like 20 seconds. Long distance relationships, that used to not really be a thing in high school, but because a lot of you have relationships with people online, that especially if you're a gamer, there are a lot of relationships. Hey, I want to be serious here. You want to be extra careful about emotional ties. Physically, you're going to do just fine, right? But emotionally, it's so easy to make up for what you can't do physically, emotionally. I hope a few of you heard that. All right, now I want to go over a timeline. Now, this is more applicable to college, but I just want to hit the big bullet points. Here's what happens. You start dating, you write your boundaries down as soon as you're official. You get to know each other over time. You get to know each other's family over time. Some of you, you're not going to be in a relationship unless your family knows that person. I like your family. They're my people, all right? Now, some of you are like, you don't want to know my parents. And that's the thing that you need to also understand, that when I married my wife, I married into her family. That was a huge blessing. When my wife married me, she married into my family. That was a huge refining process, all right? We're crazy. So you need to know that you need to get to know each other's family and understand, like, I'm going to be just real blunt with you. There's people that their family is, you really need to consider that that's someone you're going to marry into that family. Now, you're not defined by your family, but they influence you. And so if your family is like not walking with the Lord at all, then that doesn't mean that you're disqualified from having a godly husband or wife. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you need to understand their influence and live with that understanding, pursuing God, knowing that that influence is in your life. Fair? All right. Now, here's what the main thing I want to get at. People start dating. They're like, I'm going to marry this person. They get engaged. Then after they get engaged, they come to me and they say, hey, we want to do counseling for marriage. I said, okay, sounds good. And at that point in the relationship, they've already booked a venue. They've bought a ring. They've done all this stuff. And by all this stuff, what I mean is they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars. The whole point of pre-engagement counseling or the whole point of premarital counseling is you're going to sit in a pastor's office like mine, and we're going to talk to you about all your past, all your stuff, all your relationship. How do you handle conflict? How do you handle this? And I want you to answer as honestly as possible. And if you have already put down a deposit on a venue that's really expensive, it's going to be hard to answer those with as much honesty and clarity as I want you to. So when you have, if you're a junior, let's say you start dating Jesus incarnate, number 2, junior year. Here comes sophomore, junior year of college. You have a good job, and you're gonna somehow able to do it. Then do premarital counseling before you buy the ring. All right. That way you can remember the goal's clarity. Pre-engagement counseling, you're going to get through to the other end, and you're going to have greater clarity if you've done it well. All right, last bit. You guys, this is good stuff, yeah? That's good? That's fun? All right. I'm glad you're clapping, because now we're talking about breakups. All right, here's what you need to know. When do you break up with someone? Now, I want to say this again. Breakups are not fun. When I broke up with my girlfriend in high school, it's actually one of the biggest regrets. Hear me out. Not breaking up with her, but how I did it. I knew that we weren't good for each other in marriage. Like it wasn't. And that's when, one of the ways you know you should break up is when you realize, I don't want to marry this person. Then you should break up with them. If you're in it, but you don't want to marry them, you're just wasting each other's time. All right? But it's still difficult. It's still hard. I didn't like it because I thought I really liked this person. I just knew we weren't supposed to get married. And so you break up when you know marriage isn't on the horizon. You break up if you're in habitual sin. If you guys keep sinning together, you need to break up. All right? If you have wrote boundaries and you're just ignoring them, you need to break up. And you also need to break up if the relationship's unhealthy and not in a fixable way. If it's abusive, if you're over-dependent on each other, if one person's not a Christian, you need to break up with them. You should only be dating someone who loves Jesus passionately. Otherwise, it's not a good relationship. So how do you break up with someone? Here's how you do it. You say, hey, let's get together. You drive separate. Don't drive together. You go to somewhere like a coffee shop or somewhere where it's not a sit-down restaurant. Right as you get there, you say, hey, I need to talk to you right away. You tell them that you need to break up and why. Now, if they say, there's going to be some pushback, likely. But hopefully you've already worked through some of that pushback. If not, then you probably got quick, you went into this quick. But if you're like, hey, I need to break up with you, and you give them a reason, and like, oh, I don't do that, or I don't know where you got that, then like get counsel throughout all of this. But be ready, tell them you need to break up, you break up, and here's what I want you to know. You don't blame God. Don't be like, hey, Jesus told me to break up with you. That's stupid. All right, we do that all the time. Now, if you're breaking up with them because you want to pursue God, then you own it. Hey, we need to break up because I want to run after God in a way that this relationship's not allowing me, or in a way that I don't believe that you want to. See how you're owning it? You're not blaming anybody. That's how you break up, and I'm sorry I don't have time to spend more time on that. Now, here's the last thing. I know I've said that before. As far as you know, the last thing. Guys, girls, what happens if you've messed up? You know, relationships are difficult and hard. And I want to spend just a quick second as we wrap up this series. What happens if you've messed up? What I want you to add to these notes where it says receive forgiveness is I want you to put before that repent and receive forgiveness. Now, because you can't receive forgiveness if you don't repent, right? And so if you've messed up, if you've gone too far physically, emotionally, spiritually, if you've entered into a relationship that you never should have gotten into, then you need to recognize that and say, sorry, Lord. I need you to forgive me. And then you need to forgive each other. Now, if you've gone too far physically, you played a role in that and they played a role in that. You need to ask the Lord to forgive you and you need to forgive that person. Don't walk around with unforgiveness as one of the most toxic things we can ever own. Next thing you need to do is you need to beware of the cycle. This is the breakup or makeup cycle. Here's what happens is I know a lot of people that they break up, but they break up because they realize something's off, and then quickly the other person promises that it's going to be better, and then they make up, and then nothing changes. Or someone breaks up and it's just another way of getting attention or getting their dependents fed. All right, be very cautious of that. And lastly, I want you to walk in redemption. And here's what I mean by that. 1 Corinthians 6:9 says this, do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. And here's the heavy part. It says, neither fornicators, idolaters, adulterers, the effeminate, nor homosexuals, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revelers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. That's a heavy list. Here's why I wanted to read that, because the next words say this. Such were some of you, but you were washed, you were sanctified, and you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and in the Spirit of our God. I don't know how many relationships you've been in or if you've been in any. I don't know you in here in this room right now. I know some of you have gone pretty far and some of you haven't even started going down there. But here's what I want you to know. You will never be at a place where the Lord can't come and intervene and bring restoration and bring grace unless you choose to be there. If you want to know the Lord and walk in His forgiveness and walk in His redemption, it is available to us if we are willing to repent, forgive where needed, and turn away from those things. And I have friends who have lived lives apart from God and been in relationships that were very, very unhealthy. And I have friends who were in those situations for a long time. And now they're in healthy, God-honoring marriages. They have children that love the Lord, and they're impactful, powerful members of this church. Wherever you're at, possibly whatever you've done, it only defines you as much as you allow it to if you don't come to Jesus. But when we come to Jesus, He defines us. He changes the story for us. Now, over the last 3 weeks and tonight, we went over a lot of material, and the band can start coming up. And right now, this material here today, this heavy, it's a lot. Some of you are thinking, man, that's a lot of work to do. And I want you to know this. By the world's standards, this is absolutely radical. By the world's standards, you're going to show some of your friends, and you might, if you were like me, you might show your parents this, and they might not think it makes a lot of sense. My parents, their relationship was not like this, and they had no expectations for any of my relationships to be like this. I went out to dinner with them last night and with my wife, and they said, hey, you guys live so much differently than the way we did. But we couldn't be more proud of where you're at. You know, by the world's standards, if you want what the world offers in relationships and what the world offers in marriage, do it the world's way. But if you want what God has for you, and I want to tell you, it is worth it. Absolutely, it's worth it. And if you want what God has for you, then do it differently than the world. Be willing to put in the extra work here. Be willing to put off some of the things you want early in a relationship so you don't have to put off those things when you're married, and so that you can walk in the favor of the Lord and His blessing. God has an incredibly important role for marriage. But we need to take dating and everything up to it seriously so that we can carry out that role and He can be glorified. Will you guys stand up for me? Guys, go ahead and bow your heads for a second. Jesus. Jesus, I pray you would send your Spirit right now. And Lord, I want to first pray for those in this room who want this. They heard this message in the last 2 weeks, and they have decided within their hearts that they want to pursue relationships in this radical way so that they can know your radical blessing. Father, I pray that you would strengthen their conviction. Lord, I pray that you would help them stand firm in your truth and walk in the leading of your presence. And Father, I pray for them that nothing would stand in the way of them carrying out your will and living out and being in relationships that honor you. God, I want to pray for those in this room tonight who have heard this and they want it, but they don't think they'll ever be able to do it. That they think it's just too much or that they're not capable. And Jesus, I pray in your name against that lie, and I pray that you would show them that through your strength they are more than capable to do these things. And I pray right now that they would resolve, they would decide in their heart that they're going to give it a try, that they're going to trust you. Father, I pray they wouldn't rely on their own strength, but that they would learn and rely on yours. God, I pray lastly for those who have been hurt because of relationships that have not carried this out, and maybe because of relationships that they have been in. God, I thank you that you're the great physician, and you mend bones and you mend hearts. I thank you, Lord, that when you describe yourself in Matthew 11, you say, "Come to me, all of you who are tired and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For I am of a gentle and humble heart." I pray for my brothers and sisters here who are hurt. May you bring healing. And may they know the freedom that comes when you have come and given them rest. May our lives honor you. May our lives bring you glory. May our relationships honor you. And may this room, may we in the future make up a bunch of marriages that honor you and that change this church and our community for the better. You are a good God.